Today on the podcast, I am joined by Ryan Heafy. Ryan is the co-founder and COO of 6am City, which, if you're not aware, is one of the fastest growing local media companies in the US, reaching millions daily with the most relevant need-to-know news and events through newsletters, social media, and more. So Ryan, thanks for taking the time out of your day. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Paul. Glad to be here.
Yeah. And I've been watching 6am City for a while. You guys kind of in our prep, I said you made some big moves recently and we can talk about all that. But first, I would love it if you could just give us a bit of your background, like kind of your professional background, what drew you into local journalism and this model, and maybe like a bit of the story of 6am City. Love to hear it.
Yeah, it sounds good. I think the start is it was a mistake. I had no intention ever of getting into local media or trying to raise capital and enter the local media space, which is probably one of the hardest places to raise capital and grow a business successfully because most of the industry is in decline. My background is actually as a mechanical engineer. I worked in aerospace manufacturing for Sikorsky Aircraft, focused on growing the supply chain for the Black Hawk helicopter transmission. Traveled the world for several years. So I'm a lean Six Sigma black belt manufacturing business process operations guy. I am not a media guy. And if we go back to when we started the company, we were being a little bit of a disruptor. The local journalists took note of that I was this guy that wasn't in the media space. And I was like, I don't even read books. I don't have I just don't, I'm not a journalist. I just don't get it. And they just took to Twitter and just destroyed me. It was amazing. But what the value was, is that we took my manufacturing process business mindset and merged it with my business partner, Ryan Johnston, who is co-founder and CEO of the company. And his family owned a legacy print media company in Greenville, South Carolina. And they had a weekly newspaper. They had glossy lifestyle publications, business journal, and more, but no digital presence. And so through leadership, Greenville, South Carolina, where we're headquartered and live still today, we had come to meet each other. We were kind of disruptors in local boards and different groups in the community, kind of challenging status quo and moving our southern city a little bit further forward and some of its structure, participating in economic development locally, and going, man, my family business doesn't have a digital presence. We would love to expand to more places, but the print model doesn't really work that way. And the writing on the wall says, we need an evolution here. And I had exited the aerospace industry after coming down to South Carolina to help run an aerospace manufacturing company. And I was trying to figure out what to do next. And long story short, a few conversations and beverages later, I came on as a contractor to help turn their family business into spinning up a digital product. We were following the model of Ted Williams in Charlotte. He had built the Charlotte Agenda, which later sold to Axios. And at the time when we started, we really just had the Hustle, the Skim, Morning Brew, and the Charlotte Agenda kind of all just coming out of the ground. Difference was the way that each of those businesses were financed. And ours was a product innovation of a legacy local media brand. So while a lot of folks were growing nationally, we were doing grassroots local. And how do we grow ourselves up? And so that my background plus Ryan's legacy media background kind of collided together to create a newsletter business that we have today.
That's awesome. That's a different background than a lot of people that come on here. And it's interesting. A lot of times I've had people on who are COOs and it's just kind of like a title that's put upon them after being in the organization. Sounds like you're like a true operator though, with that background. So it's an interesting kind of mashup of how it kind of founded. That's really cool.
It led a lot to the success. I mean, the challenge with a lot of legacy media is that it's so rooted in legacy infrastructure and mindset. And Ryan Johnston, it was all about creating content that people actually want to consume. And I was all about how do you do it efficiently and at scale with processes and infrastructure before AI was even here on the scene. How do you build this playbook to do this and be able to scale it and repeat it? And we are entirely different people with different perspectives and collide together And as co-founders, the co-founder journey is such a different experience to be able to actually have someone to bounce your ideas off of, evaluate your MVP. Does this look like a duck, walk like a duck, and quack like a duck, and make money like a duck can't? That doesn't, is it working? And it was. And so we had great traction out the gate, scaled to 7, then 21 cities, and now over 400. But maybe it would be helpful to share just at its core, 6 a.m. Delivers local newsletters in cities across America. It's typical 5-minute conversational, most relevant, need to know local news and events in a community. We really pride ourselves in our differentiator, which is that we don't cover politics. We don't cover crime. We don't cover divisive topics. We're more focused on being an economic engine for the cities we serve. How do you drive meaningful economic impact by letting folks know how they can spend their time, their talent, and their treasure locally? And that moves the needle for both the community. It's a brand safe environment for advertisers. Readers enjoy it. It brings trust and credibility back to news. And I think it also positions us for kind of the future of local media.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, I mean, you touched on a lot of stuff, but that's a lot of that stuff is exactly why I wanted to have you on, because you guys are doing a great job of it. You kind of touched on this in my next question. I had written down that your model really feels different than a lot of traditional local outlets that you read out there. I'd love you to maybe expand on that, and maybe talk about like what part of 6 a.m.'s growth you've been most proud of, and also just touch on that part of how you get that different feel and like kind of what the reporting looks like and stuff. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think the biggest differentiator is that we've completely reimagined the newsroom. So we're designing for the news consumer of tomorrow. We are building the newsroom 2.0, right? And so legacy models have such a massive overhead structure, deep journalistic bench. They're working aggressively on uh, large bodies of work that take a ton of time. But then there's a problem. They complete that work. So some journalist in a traditional capacity does an investigative report. They've spent 80 hours on that investigative report, and then the distribution falls flat. So while the journalist's work is amazing, it's great content, it's awesome, it probably adds value to people, but the media outlet itself is going to maybe share about it one time on a local news broadcast, maybe if we're in broadcast, or maybe print a piece of it in the paper, and then they put it all behind a paywall. And so no one actually reads it because no one wants to pay for the subscription. That's not a sustainable model unless you're unless you're the New York Times or something. You have to be at scale. Local city paper at this point is not getting there. And so while you have all these legacy models that are relying on legacy means to reach people that are rapidly declining. And so with the progress of AI, local search is devolving, and it's like you need to actually be creating content in an answerable format, which is how our newsletters are delivered. Small text-based pieces of content. We are highly optimized for GEO, generative engine optimization search. So like when someone goes and asks a question now, most people are pivoting to search through something like ChatGPT instead of Google. Well, there goes all the newspaper's content because it's not pulling from that, because it's not answering the questions that people are asking. And then the newspaper industry is just getting consolidated. They've sold off all their real estate, which was propping them up. And now there's nothing else to cut except the people and the products themselves. See the Atlanta, I think it was, or somebody just recently cut the entire paper production. We were going to see a lot more of that, right? Everyone's going to try to go and make the evolution to digital and cut that out. So that's reduces distribution. And the ones who were distributing a newspaper would say that, here, I'm sending out 10,000 copies. The print affidavit says 40,000 people read it, but walk around your neighborhood. When the newspaper lands on, say it landed on 10 people's front doorstep in your neighborhood, of those 10 people, probably 8 of them threw it directly in the trash. Certainly, each paper wasn't read by 4 people front to back. So there's a falsehood in the metrics. And then similarly on linear TV, people consume content historically on the morning and evening news broadcasts. That's not realistic anymore. I want my content on my YouTube shorts and Insta Reels and TikTok and, in just other formats that they don't deliver. And so while broadcast is trying to make that evolution, it's hard because you have all this legacy infrastructure and process and belief by the folks who are doing that work and the great work. It's hard to move folks. Like even just to get the concept of AI adapted. So we're nimble, we're small, we are progressive in our desire to adopt tools and technology that lets us be positioned to be leaders in the market. We have a broader reach because we don't cover the politics, the divisive topics, and stuff that people just are tired of. We have credibility. We are a creator. If you think about it, our social accounts and newsletters are influencers in their own right in all these different markets. Our editors are B-list celebrities essentially in these cities. And so as the news outlets try to pivot going from, okay, we won't have a morning newscast in 2 to 5 years. We now need to turn our anchors into content creators to be part of this creator economy. And so that they can be part of some reel of content that's going to get served in some streaming capacity going forward. Else they become irrelevant. And so, I think we play a huge part right now in that distribution in the ability to take our content and fit into the future ecosystem.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, you've touched on so many like themes of the podcast lately, just in that one little snippet. And the creator economy thing, I just had some ladies on from, it's called Pittsburgh's Public Source in Pittsburgh, obviously. And they kind of saw the writing on the wall with that stuff too. And they actually launched a whole pilot program where they went to the local influencers already there and like partnered with them. So there's different ways of it being tried. And you also see that on a bigger scale, like when you see somebody who gets a following who works at the New York Times or something, they're just bailing and going to Substack. You know what I mean? So that stuff is definitely happening. I did want to get back. Go ahead.
The challenge with some of those, though, that are pivoting out is they lack the business skill set or the just basic understanding of a P&L and like, what do I need to do to achieve a profitable, sustainable model? And that's where I think we play a really interesting part with a lot of folks as a distribution partner and mechanism to like help elevate and monetize their business. But yeah, it's really interesting to see some of that evolution happening.
Yeah. And yeah, you guys are very well positioned. That's really cool. You had talked about, I forget if you said consumer or reader 2.0 or something like that. And I agree with a lot of the stuff you said there with the false metrics. Like I was talking with somebody recently who was talking about like local magazines and like, yeah, they're shipping out to 9,000 doors that didn't ask for it. And that's just not the way people are going to consume things going forward. Like, what is this? I didn't sign up for this, So it's just that kind of legacy model is just, it's kind of falling apart, some of that stuff. But in terms of the 2.0 consumer, in terms of 6 a.m. City, what's most exciting for you guys in terms of content innovation? I know you guys are doing a lot, but yeah, what are you thinking about that? Like you kind of talked about it a little bit already.
I think the biggest thing that we're looking at when it comes to content and innovation is how AI plays into that ecosystem. Right now, we acquired an AI-based newsletter company, which might show that we're pretty bought into the topic. But I think when people think about AI typically and content efficiencies, they're thinking about like generative AI to like create the content. And we see it maybe a little bit differently in that AI is a great tool to help get you closer to the finish line faster, and empowers the editors that we have in our different newsrooms across the country, and also can go all the way if you set it up right. And so when we build content that is fueled or empowered by AI or data sets, we still build the framework and infrastructure for the content with our product studio. Hey, we want to cover home of the week for example. Well, what does that look like? There's an H1, H2, an image, body copy. It's written in this structure. It needs to carry these important details. And so that's humans that determine that. The AI can pull the data sets to populate that and then, render it and add a little extra blurb to it to get it to publish into a newsletter. But it doesn't require an editor to write it in 400 different cities for me. It requires an editor to one time create the template and infrastructure for the content that can then be augmented and enhanced by the AI and scaled by the AI. And so we're really looking at, like, from a content innovation perspective, like there's just intentional smart use of the tools that have become more and more readily available to be able to do things at scale, to buy time and let the editorial staff focus on where they're really good. I'll let them shine in the innovation and the content and ideation and strategy and what we go after, and leverage the tech to augment that or to make them so much more dangerous. Like I now can go source and pay attention to everything going on in a community, and I can deliver it to the editor in that city at 7 o'clock in the morning in a bulleted format of all the stuff that came out in the last 12 hours, so that they're not having to sit there like a news desk, waiting to listen to the police scanner for what's coming through, or look for a press release to come through, or scan through the city agenda for development news. No, all that's automated. It lands in the hands of the editorial staff, and then they are already on the production side, and they go cross-reference and validate, right? But they shouldn't have to spend hours and hours just trying to find the starting point. And so we really are working to optimize those areas of how content is created and produced in our cities.
Yeah. And I think you're totally thinking about it in the right way. I've talked to a lot of publishers, worked with a lot of publishers, and there is that like whole segment of people who are like, we're not just going to let a robot write all our stuff. And like you said, that's not, you're kind of you're missing the point. There's so many efficiencies to be gained, just multiplying that human power, you know what I mean? And speeding everything up. And yeah, looked like you had something to say.
Well, I think that the other piece of this is, like, AI is a amazing way to learn. So we acquired, 400 cities, 400 AI newsletters, right? And we know that we can expand that to 2,000 very quickly because the model and infrastructure works and it adds value to those communities. But it also allows me to build reputation, credibility, audience. It lets me leverage self-serve advertising opportunities, national advertising, like dollars that creates a foundation for any city in America. And if I can take and plant we call them our seed markets. If I can plant those seeds all over the country, I can now compare 2,000 markets growth. I can compare the pride and place of the consumers in those markets. I understand where the advertising potential is already in an automated capacity. I have lead gen basically on advertisers. I have a built-in audience. I now get it to pacing at $5,000 a month, $5,000 to $7,000 a month in revenue. And I go, hire an editor. Okay, hire an editor, apply some additional sales talent, and we take markets, we call them from seed to launch to growth to profit. And so our profit markets have a full-time editor, for full-time salesperson, some additional product features. And in one city, the newsletters can do 600 to 1.2 million a year in annual revenue with that profit model. So seed is your stepping stone. It lets us identify and go, hey, these are the 10 overperforming markets. They're getting to that next threshold. They're all sustainable. They all operate profitably. Let's throw additional resources to it and take it and push it to the next level. But it allows us in our model to basically create a sustainable media model that can work in any city in America, which I would argue there is not one of those currently existing in any city in America that truly can say for the long haul, we are confident in our build here. Most of them are built on the backs of nonprofit dollars that can disappear tomorrow. Our membership models or they're built on rented land that could disappear and completely turn their model upside down, or they're rolled up by private equity that can shut them down tomorrow. I mean, there's so many factors in play for a lot of the other entities. And, who else has a footprint like we do in a scalable model, leveraging technology that's kind of infinitely scalable at this point?
Yeah, and I'd like to talk about that a little bit, just the growth side. I think when I first introduced you, read off the LinkedIn that you're one of the, by your own admission, one of the fastest growing local media companies. And then you said that you acquired the AI newsletter company with 400 publications, and you could grow that to 2,000. So I'm curious what you've learned and what you're learning about growing at that pace and keeping that local voice. That's got to be, I don't know if it's more of an art than a science, or I'm just curious any takeaways you have, what you've learned along the way so far.
I'll tell you the mistakes we made historically and why we made the decision now. I mean, so when we were originally growing the company, we had a managing editor and two city editors and a salesperson per market, plus audience development spend, plus additional overhead. And if you do like super simple math, that's really expensive. Over time, we evolved to a structure where we had two editorial staff per city with one managing editor for like 6 cities. And had some audience development growth expense. Well, that was about $250,000 a year operating cost per city. Well, you had to make that. And so if you go and expand rapidly, which we did, we tried to go from 7 to 21 cities in like 6 months. Well, if you just like very, very simple construct there. I mean, if there's 15 cities at $250,000 a year in burn, and you have made $0 in revenue yet in any of them, that doesn't really work. And we learned that the very hard way. And so over time, identifying that there's a much more operationally efficient way to run our markets, and the ability to lean into technology to grow and seed these markets faster. I can now turn on a city today and be profitable tomorrow, because we're leveraging the AI technology. We lean into our self-serve ad tech, and then you just tick up. And so month one, it does $100 in revenue. Month two, it does 500. Month six, it's at 2,500. And 8, 9, 10, 12, you're hit that $5,000 a month mark. Bring on a full-time staff person, tick up to the next level. And so through all of that, how are we confident that the content's good or going to be good? The company we bought was reliant very much on legacy other media outlets for curation of content. I don't believe that's the right approach going forward. We've built a lot of strategic partnerships with relevant data sets on a local level to ensure that we're sourcing more from native sources, so that am able to pay attention now to the top 5 employers in a market and their direct content pages. They're people that would pay us to share their content, that want us to share their content. Well, it's not, and it's by having those content relationships or being able to get content directly from the sources in market, you're now not pulling from a news article that's inherently biased. Because no matter what, as unbiased as any person wants to be, the word choice anyone uses adds bias to their writing. And if AI is trying to parse someone's writing from a journalistic perspective, it's going to inherit that and potentially have issues. So we are working more on factual data sets supported by our editorial guidance and 10 years of learning what works and what doesn't work on a local level and how to write and approach content. And then marrying our editorial expertise over 10 years with the technology to source content and match data sets with that expertise and deliver a high quality product. And so we are about a month away or so from relaunching all these markets that we acquired a few months back under 6am's brand standards, from an editorial ethics perspective, from a design perspective. And I think people are going to see that you can do a lot with AI when it's merged correctly with an editorial leadership and a sales leadership that allows it to thrive in a market. And I just don't think it's been done anywhere. There's a lot of AI slop and crap that's out there. And I think that we have a different approach with 10 years of history behind it to change the game.
Yeah, yeah, and last thing anybody wants is another AI slop. That stuff's getting worse too. I was on the a call with a guy the other day, and it was kind of like a eureka moment when he mentioned it. He was like, AI has an input problem. Up to this point, AI has had decades and centuries of content to parse through and everything, and everybody's getting reliant on it. But if the new stuff isn't going out, then it's just going to get sloppier and junkier like that. So it's just an interesting tidbit that somebody else had kind of touched on the other day.
We believe you can also help to train it. The flip side is like we are actually taking data, creating the answers for it. So we have the ability to become a source. I mean, look, like look at ChatGPT's big reliance on Reddit.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
that's not like it just randomly picked Reddit. Like there's a very specific reason why it's picked Reddit. And a lot of what we can do with newsletters and how we're parsing the news allows us to become, and we're already seeing it as a source for some of the LLMs, just or without us even intentionally partnering with them and picking up a level of increased web traffic where a lot of other media outlets are losing web traffic, although we don't necessarily care about web traffic anyways, but we are actually seeing it play in our favor as a newsletter company.
Super interesting. It's fun. The Reddit deal and everything. My wife, just a side note, my wife, her go-to now, if she's looking for something, like she wants clothes for her toddlers or something like that. She just goes to ChatGPT and it's like toddler clothes Reddit and just like tells it to go search Reddit for. But that's kind of a different use case also.
But that's how people are searching for content now,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
why traditional media isn't working. It's not designed to be the answer. And so journalists, while they do amazing work, are writing what they believe is correct to write, but they're not necessarily writing correctly for the audience or for the tools. And so while the content can be amazing, if it's not designed for consumption and distribution, it's kind of useless. And so there needs to be an evolution and a training and some stuff to help move the great work that's been done traditionally to uh, this era.
So I didn't have this in the questions, but you kind of brought it up, and I think it would be pretty useful. When you were talking about, you were launching cities and immediately had 250K of operating expenses and stuff, and you had to find the revenue for that. I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about like kind of, you don't have to share numbers or anything, but like where that revenue is coming from, and every publisher is thinking about revenue in new ways lately. Do you see any big opportunities for monetization going forward? Or just like, what's that whole side kind of look like to you guys right now? I'm curious.
I think a lot of what people think is going to work for monetization does not work. It can in niche environments, things like events or things like membership, subscription, giving campaigns, nonprofit funding, whatever. I mean, like, there's a lot of things there. But if we look at like media landscape, unless you have some meaningful reach, it's not necessarily worth it. And so like, I talk a lot about like the event paced approach. Like I'm going to throw a happy hour thing and hope some people come out to my event so I can pick up some subscribers for my newsletter. That's going to make me money. I'm like, well, how much time did you spend? What was the bar tab? Like all these things. And like at the end of the day, if it cost you $2,000 to do a thing, whatever like the acquisition strategy is or monetization strategy, if your fulfillment cost outweighs what you make or what you get in subscribers or what you could spend that money and time and effort doing elsewise, it's a bad idea. And so for us, we measure all of the acquisition opportunities or revenue generating opportunities against like the acquisition. I can pick up a subscriber for well below $1. Well, that means if I spend $1,000 to do an event, I need to, one, generate 1,000 subscribers, or two, make more than $1,000. And a lot of people just don't process all of that effectively. So I think a lot of those things, while they're flashy and cool and fun and people can get behind them, like you really need to understand what the ROI is and the long-term vision of those activities is. Direct ad sales, though, is where it's at, I think, especially in local media, adapting and positioning yourself for the evolving landscape. A lot of people have performance-based dollars around SEO-based activity. Well, as that stuff moves to GEO, are you optimized for those types of shifts to pick up those dollars? I think that our ability to generate revenue on a regional level is where we win and where a lot of folks can win, but a lot of folks are not positioned for it. So if I'm in our headquarters in Greenville, South Carolina, if I was just selling in Greenville, South Carolina, my revenue potential is limited to that market. But if I'm in Greenville, South Carolina, and Charlotte, North Carolina, and Columbia, South Carolina, and Atlanta, and Chattanooga, Tennessee, and I have this whole region, and I have a healthcare system or a financial institution that's in all these markets, well, now instead of 36 or whatever it is, $36,000 a year in one market, it's a $212,000 a year contract with one advertiser. And so the ability to optimize higher AOV with fewer people is way better. So then having to fulfill stuff for like for 10,000 like small advertising clients. So direct sales, high CPM, which is really just flat rate buys with bigger regional advertisers is, I think, the best path for a lot of media companies, because the national stuff, the ad networks, the CPC, CPL, performance-based stuff isn't going to carry the bag to actually cover your expenses in most instances, unless you have a big, big distribution list or reach. That's going to change the game, or you can get massive brand dollars. I mean, if you're not signing those kind of contracts, I don't think it's a sustainable approach. Whereas the highest CPM rate, if we compare everything to a CPM rate, the highest rates are on local, then regional, and then national. And there's just been a lot of additional things that have brought down the media industry and devalued content or newsletters, or similar to the web, right? You had websites spin up and salespeople that were selling linear TV or print magazine stuff, high CPM rates or flat rates. Well, then the web turned on and everyone started giving away the display for nothing as added value. And then live intent comes in, and now it's just a dumpster fire of crap on people's sites. And they have a million pop-ups and all sorts of annoying things that make them very little money unless you have a large amount of traffic. Similar thing happened with newsletter industry, and people, like a lot of legacy publishers, gave away the email ad inventory for nothing. Yep. And then you have that combined with ad networks that come in, and it's similar to live intent, maybe a tiny bit better. And so it's just a race to the bottom in a lot of ways. So figuring out those direct relationships and having the sales team and providing value or allowing yourself to get the bigger brand deals, that's where the money's at. And that's where it is for us. I mean, a large majority of our revenue is in direct sales, local regional ad dollars in cities across America. And then it's important to take the lower dollar things and automate them. Self-serve ad portal that we have is huge. Like, take the friction out, take the sales commission out, take the revenue fulfillment team out. Like, it just automatically, it's below $500, below $2,500. It should just all be automated. Put your time and effort and talent against the higher AOV products and opportunities, and have a much more efficient, profitable business model.
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of really the model. It's tale as old as time. If you can get companies more money, they will give you money. You know what I mean? Like the event stuff you talked about, I've seen people do really cool stuff with that and everything, but just a quick example. There's a big block party that was thrown here in town yesterday, and there had a ton of turnout last year. It was really cool. And I went with my wife and my boys last night, and guess what? It rained like all day long. And like, nobody showed up. It was like a quarter of last. It was I felt kind of bad for him, but there's also things like that. All right, we're.
But you rely on that, and then like that rains, and then if you're not selling, if you're based on ticket sales, but you've already paid your contracts to your vendor. I mean, there's so many variables in all of that you can end up upside down real quick. and it's not a reliable. It's not reliable. It's not sustainable. It's not scalable. And ultimately, you put yourself at the mercy of a lot of other things that are outside of your control. Sure, markets can go up and down, ad dollars change and fluctuate, but like it's a lot easier to forecast and project and understand trends if you can build some SaaS version of something into your ad sales package where you have, more consistent guaranteed recurring revenue. That's great. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of bets on things that just don't move the needle, but take a ton of time.
Great. All right, man. We're coming up on time. I would love you just let people know where people can find you, 6 a.m. City, anything, any big news or anything else you'd like to promote or point people to. And I can link to all this stuff in the show notes also.
6 a.m. City. If you want to learn more about 6 a.m. City, they can go to 6amcity.com. We break down all the different product lines that we offer. One of the things outside of our core focus and core business of operating newsletters in cities, we do a lot of product studio work where we do white label newsletters for other brands, healthcare industry, travel and tourism, master plan communities, et cetera. Like we know this space really, really well and have a whole team designed to create and develop newsletters for other folks. We also can support monetization and things like that for different newsletter brands based off of our existing relationships. But one of the coolest things I think is that we've built a resources platform. So we call this Behind the Newsletter. It talks everything about the industry, thought leadership, and we spun up a free Slack channel for anyone in the newsletter industry, whether you're a marketer on the growth marketing side, sales side, want to know more about the industry, or you're the operator founder. It's a good place for everyone to kind of collaborate. And we share a lot of our lessons learned in there. And it's been becoming a great community. We've launched a couple weeks ago and have hundreds of people already on the platform.
Cool. And I'll link to all that stuff. And I know you're also active on LinkedIn. I'll link to you on there also. Ryan's a good follow. I follow him myself. Okay, Ryan, that about covers it. Thanks so much for your time. This is awesome. That was like a clip generator. I can probably get a bunch of social media clips out of that episode. So
Awesome.
thanks for being here, man. I do appreciate it.
Sounds great. Appreciate it, Paul. Thank you.